Hi everyone. Over the last few months, I've been doing an online interview series with many people and organisations who do incredible work for animals, rescuing, caring for them and advocating for them within the community. And as part of that series, I'm absolutely stoked today to be speaking with Dr. Elaine Ong, veterinarian and founder of Vets for Compassion. Elaine's been the principal surgeon and owner of Box Hill Veterinary Hospital since 1995. She's also the founder of Vets for Compassion, a charity that sends vets and vet nurses to volunteer in underdeveloped countries, teaching vets to perform cat and dog birth control, surgery, anti-rabies vaccinations, all sorts, and delivers animal welfare education as well. Now, as well as that, this is all apart from being the principal trainer of the Train the Trainers project in Asia. Elaine is a founding member of the Australian Veterinary Association Emergency Task Force following the Black Saturday bushfires, and a volunteer veterinarian and data for wildlife in Victoria during emergencies. Now, in 2009, she was awarded the Bell Reid Medal by the University of Melbourne for her significant contribution towards animal welfare in her pioneering projects and volunteer work. I think you'll agree, a classic underachiever there. Welcome, Elaine, and how are you going through all this challenging time?
Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah, we actually keeping busy at the clinic. As you said, I'm a cat and dog vet. We are busy supporting our clients and our patients, particularly that we have a few elderly clients who cannot get out of their house. So we're providing free house calls. So we've been keeping busy. Aside from that, my husband and I, Chris, we're both daughters and both vets, so we're out almost every second day to respond to macropod calls. There's still a lot of macropods out there that's been displaced. We just heard that the east-west freeway that they're building through the army barracks in Yalambi have caused a lot of strife in the area, and a lot of kangaroos have been displaced and ending up in homes and on the roads. So we out almost every second day and every weekend, that's for sure.
And are you? I've spoken with numerous people in wildlife care, and particularly rescuers. People like yourselves and Chris and Manfred and Helen and many others in Victoria, who are often on that front line. Very often when you come to a macropod, for instance, because macropods tend to be the major animals that are put in situations with car strike collision and those sorts of things with catastrophic injuries. You guys are usually the front line to go out and having to euthanize those animals as well, which is a horrible situation to be living with on a day-to-day basis. I really hope that you guys, because you can talk to each other, I hope that's a good ways and means of debriefing and letting some of that go. But I do know there are others in that situation who don't necessarily have someone close at hand who they can let those emotions go with, because it does take a tremendous toll, doesn't it?
Actually, I'm glad you brought it up because I'd forgotten about it. But I must say that on behalf of all the rescuers, not just the darters and the vets, the rescuers they do an incredible workload. They're out almost every night, every day. Chris and I work with at least 10 of them, and all of them are out almost every second day. Because of COVID, it stops us from even getting together after the job and having a cup of coffee. So I do worry about a lot of them. We do have to euthanize quite a few because of horrific injuries, and frankly, I think we need to have something for them to help them take a break from all this. This during disasters is actually worse because we have to, for example, in Malakuta, we are there on day 6, and we had to euthanize so many animals, not just kangaroos. There just was no choice. We had to do it. So I think there has to be some support for the frontline people.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And and it's one of the key planks of what we put together as the proposal for wildlife reform across the whole sector, to the minister, to the government, that there is a dedicated structure for emotional support for everyone, for rescuers, for carers, vets and darters, everyone. It needs to be there because it I personally know of a couple of people down our way who've gotten out of it because they just can't take that emotional toll.
That is true. Speaking about the department, I think as far as the rescues are concerned, I think even an acknowledgement from the government that, that thank you guys for doing this work for us. I think even that acknowledgement will help us.
Yeah, just a thanks would be nice, wouldn't it?
Would be nice, yeah. Because
Look,
I think a lot of people think that we're just machines, doing
yeah,
this. We
yeah,
certainly do it for the animals.
yeah,
Always do it for the animals.
and it's largely for most of the community as well. It's unseen work, People, generally speaking, just assume that, oh yeah, there's someone that does that, and they assume that it's government that has someone that does that, and they don't realise that it's people who volunteer their time. It's
Correct.
And it's very much an unheralded sector in that respect.
Yes, I
And
agree with you.
I just wanted to ask you that, look, Vets for Compassion is an incredible organisation, and you're making just incredibly positive changes to animal welfare, both here in Australia and abroad in Asia. Can you share with the people listening and watching some of the work the organisation does and some of the current projects that you have going? I mean, COVID aside and the obvious Kinley kangaroos and all that sort of thing, what are some of the other projects that you're involved in?
Well, let me say that we are a very small organization. We keep it small for a good and deliberate reason. We don't want to be so big that we hindered by process and and politics. So we're a very small group. We're all volunteers. 100% of us are all volunteers. The lawyers are volunteers. The PR people are volunteers. The vets are volunteers. The nurses are. The rescuers are. So we don't have a huge number of projects, but we have a few projects and we do it well. Our main projects in China, actually, we started that 12 years ago. It's called the Train the Trainer. We used to volunteer in Indonesia and Bali and Cook Islands and a few other places. We used to go there and perform surgery on 200 dogs and we come home. And we realized that that's not sustainable. The work stops and we come home. So we started a train the trainer project where we teach the vets there who are welfare minded, and then we have a contract with them that they teach others while we're not there. So, for example, in China, we have taught over 2,000 vets in about 8 different provinces. We give a free practical hands-on lesson to how to spay cats and dogs, stray cats, of course, stray cats and stray dogs. And out of the people who come, there might be 100 that turn up. We pay attention to them and we will select one or two that we know have animal welfare at heart and they're willing to learn. So those guys then become our trainers. And then they give us 2 weeks of their own time per year to train others in another province, just to show that it is sustainable. 2 weeks ago, despite COVID, our Chinese team actually went along and did another Train the Trainer project in Dongguan in the south of China in a smaller area. And from there, we selected another 3 people. So the project continues when we are not there, and it's growing. I feel that the solution is to teach, not to just do it yourself.
So the whole thing becomes self-sustaining.
Yeah, yeah, that's the plan. It's not a friend of mine described that it's not a sexy project. We don't go over and do surgery on 200 dogs each and come home feeling good about it. But we're just teaching and teaching and teaching and selecting more people to carry on the teaching. Our partner group called ACT Asia, they actually have a concurrent project teaching teachers at the schools, teaching kids about caring for life, caring for the environment, and caring for people. Now, in one province in China called Dalian, we have got every single school there in the whole province. Remember, we're not teaching the kids, we're teaching the teachers. That's even better. So we actually have government endorsement, we have university endorsement, we have also support from all the animal welfare groups in China as well. So anyway, it's slow and steady, but I think that's the way to go.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Look, I think if you were to examine any um, any university study that talks about political change or talks about organizational change, which is translatable, they say that it's one thing to go in and put a band-aid on something. That's one type of solution, but it's not lasting. And the only lasting way that you can is to have structural change, like at the base level, so that from that point moving on, everything changes, and then it becomes entrenched and becomes
Correct.
part of the culture of that organization. And that's what you're doing here. It seems very clear that what you're doing is having that lasting effect. And as you say, so that when you walk away from it, it's still going. There
Yes,
are others holding that baton and passing it on. And
correct. Yeah,
you should be
we,
commended for that. That's a tremendous thing to do.
we went to a place called Yulin in China last year. Most of you will be aware what happens in that province.
Mm.
But we were welcomed by the government and the people, and we were the first foreigners to be let in to teach their vets. So, and we do it by friendship and forming a relationship. We don't protest. We don't go naked in Tiananmen Square. We we just do it by forming friendships and relationships and teach. That's how we should do it.
Mm-hmm. My mother-in-law has a great saying, and that's that nobody wins an argument.
That's correct. She's very wise.
Yeah, I think so too. And look, I just want to cover something off that was very visible that happened in this country in late last year and early this year, and that's that we were all blown away by the way that Australians stepped up during the bushfires, donating their time, their money, resources to assist those in need. And wildlife rescue and care organisations and vets did an extraordinary job. But what it also did was it highlighted some tremendous gaps and issues in our wildlife rescue system. And they became increasingly evident as time wore on during that crisis. As a vet on the very front line of those bushfires, what are your thoughts as you reflect back on that time? And what do you feel were the greatest challenges for you?
The greatest challenge was not even the fact that we had to euthanize so many animals. The greatest challenge that we had no support from the department that was supposed to be in charge of wildlife. Um, I was very, very sad about that, Andy, because I have been working with the department for maybe over 16 years. We were working with the DAC, then as it was called, in the Grampians fires, in two of those fires. In 2012 and 14, we worked with the DELT department, the regional DELT in Scottsburn in 2016. And that was a tremendous effort. It was, a success. So I was very, very saddened to know that we've gone backwards.
Mm.
I was very much in their course. and supporting everything that they did. You know, we all volunteers, of course, but I just don't understand why it's gone backwards. That was really, really sad for me.
Mm.
I think that I just wish that the powers to be would realize that disaster response is not. It's got to be performed by a multi-skilled team. Multi-skilled team. You cannot do it alone. They cannot do it alone. You can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. It is time that we work together. I know it's a cliche, but you really got to work together as a team.
Mm.
It's not something, disaster response is not about just turning up. If you don't have a preparedness plan, all done, agreed upon pre-disaster, during peacetime, as I call it, there's no chance that a response will work. You kind of, from the department's point of view, you can't have people from all sorts of places coming into to a disaster, right? There's is a disaster waiting to happen. You'll have unprepared people without proper gear. I understand all this. So it's so important to have a well thought of a preparedness plan. Stakeholders all involved, meeting, planning, and agreeing to what's going to happen and who does what, who's got the primary role, who's got the secondary role. All that has to be done by this multi-skilled team. We all are not good at everything.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think
What we're good at doing.
that the department was perhaps so overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation that was confronting them that it induced perhaps a panic response, and that panic was to shut everybody out and just concentrate on all the other things because they knew that they could concentrate on those and they didn't want to have to think about anything else and have responsibility for those other things?
Well, they had 10 years to plan.
That's very true. And also it's not like the voices have not been loud telling them about, that things have to change and we need to be prepared. From Black Saturday up to now, there were lessons to be learned and they should have been learned.
There was definitely 11 years to plan because a committee was formed to plan for this with the department and other stakeholders.
Sorry, carry on.
The rescuers, I think people have to realize the rescuers are not going to go away.
No.
People like you, the rescuers, the shelter operators, the vets, they're not going to go away. They are rescuers particularly, they're very passionate people. These people do it for nothing. Absolutely nothing. They don't expect anything. If you try and give them money, they run. They'll never go away. I've never seen such dedicated, passionate people who do it. Of course, there's good ones and some who are not so good, but that's in every profession. But that's why we have a selection process, volunteer screening, all that sort of stuff has to occur before disaster. You get good people, you train them, and you've got a team. They're not going to go away, and I think the department has to realize that they'll always be there to help. So why not use them?
And thinking more specifically about the role of a vet in disasters like those bushfires, what changes do you think need to be able to happen for you to do your jobs effectively?
Well, again, as I said, I can't do it alone. I can't organize everything, although we did do it last time with the help of Animals Australia. By the way, they were a godsend. We do need to have the power, I suppose, the permission to be able to respond adequately at the right time. We should be able to meet with all the stakeholders We should be able to form a pre-disaster relationships with people on the ground. We know where the areas that are prone to bushfires. We should be forming agreements already now with various councils, various shelters before it happens.
Yes.
Then we would like to have our team trained to go. Obviously, my team's trained to go. We should have more teams trained to go. We should have at least 10 teams ready to go and be trained to respond in terms of training for dashing, capture, triage kits ready to go, that sort of thing. But I think the most important thing is that agreement and forming a relationship with all the various stakeholders at the moment.
And it does seem a bit strange, doesn't it, that we haven't had this prior planning and this setting up of relationships, given that summer happens every year. We have a bushfire season every year. So there's really no excuse.
It is. It's true. We've been going every year. Last year was the Tai Nong fires. We were there. I think also you have to remember that response is 90% preparedness. Everything must be done before fires. It is a response should be pre-planning has to be done from the ground up before disaster. That means consultation with people who've been on the ground. And then when disaster happens, it's governed from the top down.
That's a great response there, and it segues nicely because you've covered off some of the things in my next question, which is that, look, we recently took some really positive steps forward for wildlife in the parliamentary sector, so in the political sphere. After I introduced a bill to establish a new authority for wildlife rescue that's modelled on other emergency services like the SES and the CFA, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel there. The example is in front of us on how to do this. The government came to the table and agreed to work with me to fix wildlife rescue in Victoria. So this new authority, we've named Wildlife Rescue Victoria, and it couldn't have happened, though, without people like you providing me with advice and information around the changes we need. And I'm just wondering if you can share your thoughts on that new model with everybody that might be watching out there and how you believe it will benefit wildlife in the long term.
I think that a mistake that's often been made is that there's not enough consultation with the people who've been on the ground. Often at high-level meetings, you notice that there's not one person on the table has been on the fire ground. So I think there has to be more consultation before disaster and plans made from the mistakes that we made, over the last 20 years, from the good things, the bad things that's been made. People who've been on the ground, like myself, can shortcut you guys, can shortcut everybody as to what we should do and shouldn't do. And when disaster happens, the people at the top govern because the rest of us are too busy to talk to you. But overall, I think, Andy, you're the only one I've met in Parliament who've shown any interest in animals. And really thank you so much for pushing that agenda through. I'm really pleased to hear that. I assume
it's my pleasure. It really is.
Yeah, I think with consultation with key people that's been on the ground, I think there'll be tremendous change because all this talk for 10 years about disaster response, nothing's come to fruition. I think the key is selecting the right people to do the job, the right vets, the right darters, the right rescuers, the right responders, the right shelters, forming the pre-disaster agreements with various shelters around the state and the councils. Also agreeing on who's who's got the primary role, so that we don't have too many people doing the same thing. And I think the key is, which I haven't mentioned, Andy, is we should always do a trial response somewhere, just a trial, just to see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Even in terms of communication, recording, and how we work together. I think that's the key. There should be a trial response, but that's never ever happened.
No, and the thing about every disaster when it happens is that under the act that governs this in Parliament, which was the Emergency Management Victoria Act, immediately after a disaster has been taken care of and it moves into that it's controlled now mode and recovery, there's automatically triggered an inquiry by EMV to look at what happened, why did it happen, what are the lessons that we can learn from that. And never has it been encompassing what happens with wildlife. And one of the things that we can learn from that, even though it hasn't encompassed wildlife, is that whenever an emergency is declared like that, there is someone at the top. There is a controller in an ICU, right?
Mm.
So why isn't there automatically, as soon as that disaster is declared, that a wildlife incident controller is automatically enacted? You know, that they're automatically put into the room and that they're consulted. They have the opportunity to mobilise or hold fire the people that are ready to go, that are in those teams that you talked about. And they are just waiting for the fire ground, for instance, to be declared safe, and then they can be mobilised in a professional way. And I think that that's what a lot of people have missed the understanding of, that within government, is that despite the fact that these people are all volunteers and giving up their time, they are in the main highly professional at what they do. They know what they're doing, and most often they know far more than the representatives of the department who are actually out then trying to go and do those jobs. And that's where that recognition, I guess, that you spoke about earlier comes into it. That thanks and recognition that these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, that was in reference to what you asked me about, what would help your mental health. I think the thanks would help the mental health, but gratitude. But I really very pleased to hear that if you can, Andy, if you can get us to that level where we have the same status as a CFA, we really need to get in earlier, Andy. We cannot wait for that to happen. And I agree with you. If you can get someone on the table for animal response in conjunction with people response, we won't get in their way.
No. They work together. They're part of the overall response, aren't they?
We don't get in the way. We set up a triage center away from staging area. We know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get us to that, to have a representative for the animals at the table from day one. If you don't do that, if you don't do this, the volunteers will go in and they will be untrained volunteers. Everyone's worried about safety of the volunteers, but bear in mind that if you don't plan it and do something, the volunteers will go in and they will be unsafe. They will be untrained. They will just go in and do something and hurt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In the States, after Hurricane Katrina, when they disallowed animals to come on board their rescue helicopters and trucks, that was an absolute disaster. The lesson learned from there was that you've got to allow animals to be part of the rescue mission. And it is now the case. When my elderly parents live in Hawaii and they have hurricane scare every now and again, and the message that comes across loud and clear is that your animals are welcome. Bring them along, because they know from past experience that if you have no regard or plan for animals, people will die.
Mm.
Stay back for the animals.
Mm. Well, thanks so much, Elaine, and I'm very conscious of time. We have gone well over, but I don't mind that at all. But I am conscious that your time is extremely valuable. And look, if you could just leave our viewers and listeners with one thought for today, what would that be?
I like this. I'm obviously a cat and dog vet, so I'm passionate about cats and dogs, and I wish that people would also regard all animals as the same. They all have share the same feelings. They have the same fear. They have suffer from the same pain. I wish that in Australia we would also consider our wildlife as such, and that's during fires, during disasters, before development. I'm not anti-development. I'm just saying that we should pay the same respects to wildlife as they do for other animals.
That's very true and very profound. And it actually reminds me a lot of a saying that Philip Wallen uses. And if I can paraphrase that and add to it a little bit, in their capacity to feel pain and fear and love, a kangaroo, a koala, is a dog, is a cat, is a bear, is a boy. And I think he sums it up well.
Yes, it's very touching.
Mm. Well, thanks again, Elaine. And Mike, thanks also to Chris and to all of you out there that are doing such incredible work. The state and indeed the country owes you a debt of gratitude that they can't possibly repay.
Well, thank you, Andy, for what you do. As I said, it's teamwork. We cannot do it without you.
Well, cheers. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.